So the Democratic debate happened yesterday. I believe it was the 5th or the 6th Democratic debate. And in my opinion, it was one of the best ones yet, if not the best one yet. And I say that because people fought. And when they went at it, you were able to, more clearly differentiate the ideological differences, which really should be the point of a primary and primary debates. So I want to give you my rundown here. Since there are fewer candidates on stage, they really limited it. Now is only 7 people on stage. Previously we've had like 10 people and 4,312 people on stage. But I'm able to give like a direct rundown now, as opposed to in the previous debates. I just gave like, well, here's who I think is a winner, here's who I think is a loser, here's who, kind of was just there and didn't help themselves or hurt themselves. So, we'll go from bottom up here, who did the worst to who did the best. Dead last is Mayor Pete. In my opinion, Mayor Pete got rocked all night. Now, this is where people accuse me of saying, well, you don't like him and that's why you're putting him at the bottom. I really don't think that's a fair criticism, because I've had, I had Cory Booker winning one of the debates, or tying for winning one of the debates, and I can't stand Cory Booker. So I really do try my best throughout the course of these debates to put my ideological bias aside and try to look at it through the lens of somebody who's relatively apolitical and they just stumbled upon the debate and they want to watch it. Now, am I a machine? Can I perfectly put aside my bias? Of course not. But I do think that the fact that I've bucked trends, there are nights I've said Bernie's had a terrible night, and there are a lot of nights I've said he's had a good night. If my commentary was so colored by my biases, there wouldn't be variation in that. I'd always have Bernie at number 1. But I don't. That doesn't happen every night. Sometimes didn't have a good night. And so anyway, I hope that everybody understands that I'm trying my best here to put my bias aside and view it through the lens of somebody who's relatively apolitical, who stumbled across the debate. But in the case of Mayor Pete, he was just getting hammered. He was getting hammered. Everybody on stage was going after him, or actually, I don't know if that's fair. Most of the people on stage were going after him. And Elizabeth Warren pointed out that he just did a fundraiser in a wine cave. A wine cave. And it was a big money fundraiser. You had like $900 bottles of wine being served. So that's not exactly conducive to being around small dollar donors and caring about the concerns of small dollar donors. It's conducive to caring about the concerns of elites, because you're in a room surrounded by elites. So she brought up the wine cave. Everybody kept bringing up the wine cave. Bernie's team was wearing like Pete's Wine Cave shirts after the debate in the spin room, just like taking trolling to the next level. That's an expert level troll, man. That's on some like Trump level genius trolling right there. Wearing the Pete's Wine Cave shirts. That's like, you were caught, bro. He keeps trying to like wiggle his way out of accountability as if it's a non-issue. And it's like, no, people just don't agree with you. We think it's gross that you did a fundraiser, a big money fundraiser in a wine cave. So it paints him as this out-of-touch, corrupt elitist who's more than willing to take bribes. And it paints him as that because he is that. So, he just got hammered over and over and over. And Mayor Pete now has fallen into the same trap that a lot of the other candidates who are now dunsies have fallen into. Namely, he spends so much time in the debate talking about what he's against and not what he's for. I don't know why I come out here and give advice to these centrists who I massively disagree with, but here is a little piece of advice. If you're a neoliberal centrist, you still have to talk about what you're for, and you can't spend a lot of your time on what you're against, because then you just look like sour grapes. Then you just look like the defining feature of your ideology is to block social democracy as opposed to usher in a future that has a vision for it that, you've perceived in your mind. And so you look like a hack when all you're talking about is what you're against. You have to go out there and say, listen, here's my vision. Here's what a positive future would look like. And he fell into that trap now. And Mayor Pete, all the time, he just talks about it. Again, it's the same point over and over. Free college. Here's why the kids of rich people shouldn't, get free college. And it's like it's a pseudo populist argument. But really, ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's a right-wing argument because the core of it is universal programs are a bad idea. And it's concern trolling from a faux left-wing perspective about universal programs. So I think Mayor Pete had a horrible night. He just got hammered over and over. Then the number 5 position is Amy Klobuchar. Now, Amy Klobuchar spoke... and this was, I don't remember exactly when it was. It was either a quarter of the way through the debate or halfway through the debate, but she got a majority of the speaking time. That is absolutely absurd. She's polling one of the lowest on stage, and she got most of the speaking time compared to the other candidates. I mean, come on, man. Nobody wants to hear from Klobuchar. Nobody wants to hear from Steyer. I get it, Steyer. I get it. They made it on stage. Okay. I think Steyer made it through Steyer, through weird means. But yeah, like to give them more speaking time than Bernie and Biden, who are leading in the polls and kind of by a lot, it's just unserious, And I honestly, I would say the same thing, even if Tulsi was on stage, and everybody knows I'm relatively sympathetic to Tulsi. But if she was on stage and she was getting more speaking time than Bernie and Biden, I'd be like, I mean, come on, we're getting a little silly here. So, but with that time, she managed to do Dickie McGee's acts. Because it's classic Klobuchar. Just, awkward, folksy, I'm from the Midwest nonsense mixed in with, let me tell you why we can't do basic things that other developed countries have done. It didn't catch on in the first 5 or so debates. Why do you think it's going to catch on now? But guys, I mean, this drives me crazy, but it's the truth. The media is doing a giant Klobuchar push right now. They want you, it's a, who do you believe, us or your lying eyes kind of moment? Because in every focus group during the debate, after the debate, people are like, no, I didn't like her. But then the media relentlessly always pushes her and acts like, oh, no, she's wonderful. She's special. She's doing great stuff. Politico is trying to push, she looked very presidential on stage. Chris Saliza, also known as the world's dumbest pundit, he was pushing Amy Klobuchar. And of course, he was saying, Bernie had a bad night. Stop trying to make Klobuchar a thing. It's not going to happen. She's not going to pop off. She's not going to all of a sudden, skyrocket into the top tier of candidates. This is they seriously are all under the mass delusion that it's 1992 and they can force you to believe it's 1992. A time when she would have potentially had a chance. Now that it's just not the case, but they're trying to make it happen. But so she spoke the most and said the least. And then the 4th place is Tom Steyer. He was just there. He's like a mild-mannered dude who seems like he's in way over his head because he is way in over his head. He basically bought his way on stage. It's one of those situations where he spent so much money on ads. Only Bloomberg is in front of him. And he's carpet bombed the airwaves to the point where he gets up enough in the polls where he just ekes it onto the debate stage. And you could tell, he doesn't really belong there because he seems like he doesn't belong there. He seems like he bought his way on stage. He seems like, a deer in headlights every time they try to talk to him. And half the time he tries to sound a little more leftist, and then the other half the time he tries to sound a little more centrist, and there's no political identity there. And you could tell he's just struggling to try to differentiate himself and be like, here's why you should support me. It's just like you're watching a dude with a political identity crisis on stage, and it really comes across. And, nobody really thinks that dude won. And also, by the way, and this isn't necessarily his fault, but he didn't speak, at all. He got very little speaking time. Then we get to the number 3 position. Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a solid number 3. Now, I think it was his best debate performance yet. That's not saying much. That's like saying somebody's the tallest kid in kindergarten. But the first half of the debate, I think he was pretty good. But then the second half of the debate is when he kind of fell off. He was more sharp. He was more concise in the first half of the debate. And then in the second half of the debate, he slowly but surely became more like standard Joe Biden, which unfortunately in these days is really not sharp. But it definitely was his best debate performance yet. And one could make the argument that since he's already leading in the polls, that all he needs is debate performances like we're seeing here, where it's like, a solid third place performance, which means it might be hard to knock him down off that top spot. So I don't necessarily know the fallout here and what will happen when it comes to Biden. It's possible that he goes down a little bit. It's possible he goes up a little bit. I don't know. But in my opinion, it was definitely his best debate performance, even though it was still relatively underwhelming. Definitely underwhelming compared to 2012 Joe Biden, who was a beast on the debate stage. Just absolutely obliterated Paul Ryan in 1,000 different ways. He did it with Sarah Palin in 2008 as well. He was just sharp with it, and he took no nonsense. This Joe Biden is a lot different from that Joe Biden. But still, having said that, I think it was his strongest debate performance yet. And then the second place position is Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren had a dynamic that was somewhat similar to Joe Biden in the sense that the first half of the debate, I think she was really sharp and doing well, and then she kind of petered off in the second half of the debate. But still, I think she did enough good in the first half of the debate where the takeaway from most people will be, she had a good night. She had a good night. Now, again, that's just my opinion, but that's the sense I got when I watched it. I think she went out there knowing she had to be a little bit more aggressive, and so she did that, and it was landing in the first half of the debate, and then the second half of the debate, she just kind of, stopped surging and existed on stage without doing much. Now, that means, number one, I have a tie for number one. I have Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders for different reasons. So this is actually interesting because in the case of Bernie, I think he commanded the stage yesterday. It was classic Bernie in the sense that he was hitting, his populist themes over and over. He leaned into fights. He made a broad, strong defense of universal programs, which was wonderful to see. But it really felt like he was the front runner on stage. It felt like everything came through him. So that was a good dynamic to see. And you're about to see later on that there was a focus group done, so in a snap poll done right after the debate with the LA Times. They had Frank Luntz, who's a famous pollster, do this thing with a room full of people, and the majority said that Bernie Sanders was the winner. And it's not like the people who said he was a winner went into the debate supporting him. Many of them did not go into the debate supporting him, but they said he by far and away had the best performance. So Bernie sort of beasted there. And Andrew Yang, he did well for a different reason. Yang, I think, did well because as everybody else was fighting, he kind of laid back. Now, you could argue theoretically that's not a positive, but he turned it into a positive, and here's why. He had a lot of memorable one-liners, and he made a lot of jokes that landed. And for people who don't know about the way that these things work, debates oftentimes come down to human psychology a lot. And unfortunately, it's not even necessarily about the strength of your arguments, and it's not about the logic, it's not about the facts, it's not about it. Even sometimes it's not about your vision. It's about what's memorable, what sticks with people. And, you could think back to Trump versus Hillary. I mean, I'm sure that Hillary said, if you did a total breakdown of the full debates between Hillary and Trump, I guarantee you that, Trump had more falsehoods and Hillary made more sense. But Trump, in my opinion, won those debates. Why? Because he was more memorable, and he took a lot of shots that landed, and he made the crowd laugh. And when he did go after her, it was vicious and it was to the point. And so he had more, it was more memorable. What he did stuck with people more. In today's day and age, and granted Trump is president now, but you're more liable to hear about a Trump debate performance from back then than a Hillary debate performance, because hers was just standard. In the case of Andrew Yang, he had a lot of funny things that he said and different things that he said, which made it so that he was memorable in the room. People are going to walk away going, I like that guy. And I know because there are people in my own family who I've spoken to who, after every debate, they're like, I really like that Asian guy. He's pretty good. So this is what I'm talking about. My predictions after this debate go as follows. I think that Pete is going to go down in the polls. I think that he had his surge, then he kind of stalled out a little bit. Now he's waffling, and I'm pretty sure Pete's numbers are going to go down. I don't know how much, but I think they're going to go down. I'm relatively confident in that prediction. I also predict that Yang's numbers go up, and I honestly think they're going to go up enough so that he makes the next debate. And I don't know what the threshold is for that debate, but whatever it is, I think Yang is going to make it. I think he's going to have a surge. And then my other two predictions, those predictions I'm pretty confident on, that Yang is going to go up and that Pete is going to go down. And then my other prediction is, and these two I'm not as confident about. I could see Bernie gaining. Now, I don't know how much. I think he'll gain a little bit off this debate, but I also see Biden falling. Again, I don't know how much, but maybe a little bit. Now, those two predictions I'm not as strong on. I think it's possible that Bernie just maintains and Biden just maintains as well. I think that's possible. But my gut says Bernie's going to go up a little bit, Biden's going to go down a little bit. Slightly here I'm talking about. But definitely Pete is going to go down and Yang is going to go up. So anyway, that's my breakdown. You had Bernie and Yang both tie for a victory, in my opinion. I think Yang kind of laid back and let everybody else go at each other, but he had enough memorable lines where everybody was like, oh, cool, like I like that guy. And Bernie, I also think, won because, for the opposite reason of Yang, he leaned into the fights, but he also controlled the debate and controlled the narrative, and it felt like he was a front runner and all things went through him. And he was classic Bernie, hitting away on the populist themes, and, you know, as you guys hear me say on this show all the time, it's the populism, stupid, whether you're on the right or on the left. That sells massively. So that's my breakdown. Bernie and Yang, number 1. Warren, number 2. Biden, number 3. Biden's best night so far, I think. Klobuchar 5, and Mayor Pete 6.